New Leaders has been involved with us for the last couple of years. We had worked with them and started a cohort of rural principals last school year, 2019. We started out with 29 principals from all different parts of the east side of the state of Washington, and it was going to be a 2-year program. And so the principals have the opportunity to do one full year with New Leaders and then 4 or 5 different sessions in the second year of New Leaders. We've had 15 or 16 that have carried on to year 2. Part of that is job transition or even a change of districts. But for the most part, the majority of them have stayed with us. Courtney was actually in our first cohort and from the Davenport School District, and then has moved on and become what would you say your title is? You are
the exact title is Executive Director of Program Implementation, but it's basically working with you and the partners on making sure that we're presenting professional development that you would like in a manner that you like too.
So she has moved into that position this year, which has been a real benefit for us because we have an opportunity to work with somebody who's not only out of the state of Washington, but also is from a rural and small school district. And so it's been nice to have that piece within New Leaders. The opportunity that we wanted to provide today that Courtney will be going through is an opportunity to look at either next year's cohort or to also look how you can be involved or have a principal involved in this year. And so it's still kind of a continuation of a cohort. Cohort 2 that did start in August of 2020 has about 16 attendees that are involved in that, so it still has some room available. And so we know that there's been a lot of things going on for principals this year with reopening, and are they really reopening? Are they face-to-face or are they virtual? And so there's a lot of things going on, but our goal as a rural organization had to provide professional development that was more fit or more designed to fit around rural principals and to also create that network and collaboration piece. And I think that's kind of even the importance is going forward is kind of these principals having an opportunity to get together, whether it's virtually or face-to-face, and having that collaboration and network piece, which has been very successful. And then also to have the professional development from New Leaders. And so that will be my spiel, Courtney, and I'll turn it over to you to take it from there.
Sounds perfect. And, with a small group today, I do want to make sure that we keep this informal. If you would like to come off mute or ask a question or anything like that, just feel free to pop in and do that. Otherwise, I'll go through kind of what I've prepared, and then there's a lot of time throughout for questions or if you want more information. And, I'm excited to have you on the call today, especially being out of Mossy Rock, because that's someplace that has not been, expanded into yet at all. And I know when I was talking to Kevin a few weeks ago about just kind of the opportunities for these rural principals throughout the state of Washington now, that might be the blessing of being virtual. We might be able to reach more than what we could just within driving distance. So like Kevin said, my name is Courtney Strozik. I am the Executive Director of Program Implementation for New Leaders. I started there in June. My background prior to that, I was principal at a middle school, high school for 2 years at Reardon Edwall School District. And then after that, I've been principal for the last 6 years at Davenport Elementary in Davenport, Washington. I currently still reside in Davenport and work from home and enjoy being very connected to my community as well as the small rural schools nearby. So it's kind of a fun thing to get to work nationally, but still enjoy the community feel and enjoy the pieces that you and I both know is important in rural education. Previous to that, I taught in Renton my first 2 years out of college. I went to WSU in Pullman, go Cougs. And then I also spent 6 years in the Medical Lake School District. So I've got experience in districts of each size level in the state of Washington and have been involved in a lot of different programming and just, task forces and pilot programs in the state of Washington. And I can definitely tell you the reason I am with New Leaders is because when Kevin brought us together last year, last August, and we jumped into this program that we didn't necessarily know we were even embarking onto, it became the most effective and best professional development that I had had in my career. And so that's why when this position came up last year, I had to look into it because I wanted to spread our information at New Leaders to the state of Washington, especially to the rural schools, as well as then perhaps expand into some of the more urban schools, because I do think New Leaders trained principals have a lot to offer for the students. And my core has always been student-centered education, serving all students and making sure that they have equal opportunities to learn. So that is my quick introduction. These are the norms that we use at New Leaders. And so I'll give you a chance to just take a look at the screen and read that. They're adapted from Courageous Conversations About Race. And these ground our work in all of our community of practice meetings and coaching. So take a minute and read those. And if you have a question about that, please come off mute and ask your questions, or if you have a comment. Oh, I see a Go Cougs from Glenn in there. Very nice. I like that. With the norms, I think something, most of the programs that you go to, there's always expectations or norms. This is something that's grounded through New Leaders that I appreciate. The one that really stands out to me often, and it has since I started into this work last August, expect and accept non-closure. And if you really dig into what that is, it means that we're all collaborating and working together to serve our students. And sometimes, especially in a pandemic situation like we've endured since March, we're not always going to have that closure. And so accepting that and then working together to, first of all, be okay with not always having the answers, but then always asking the questions that we need to remain engaged in dedicated student learning at high levels. Because I know, being a principal in the building last spring, things quickly shifted to the logistics of what do we have to do to provide meals? How can we get Chromebooks? And the instructional focus was kind of taken away. And I know now that as schools are inviting their students back in, either virtually or in the hybrid piece, the instructional pieces are being connected back. And that's what I've seen our New Leaders coaches be able to do with the principals that they're serving right now. They have the one-on-one conversation of, okay, you've got your logistical pieces done. Now, how are we going to take a new innovative look at what you are doing with your classroom teachers to ensure rigorous grade level instruction? So that brings us in to our missions, and I'll let you read that. The Rural Alliance mission is on the left. The New Leaders mission is on the right. And I am going to invite you in the chat to tell me anything that you can see that is connected of those two missions. So I'll give you about a minute to do that. Okay, something that I found as I was researching both the Rural Alliance mission as well as the New Leaders mission, I think it really connects in terms of providing opportunities for all students, creating high academic achievement, and especially of those students or especially those subgroups of students either in poverty, students of color, special education students, those subgroups of students that we know in Washington have been typically underserved. Another word in there is transformational, and that's kind of what we'll talk about throughout the day as we look at what our programming offers. So the new leader's core beliefs, every student can achieve at high levels. All adults must take personal responsibility for student learning and achievement. Great schools are led by great leaders. With access to outstanding public education, all students can unlock their fullest potential in the classroom and in life. And then delivering high quality public education to all students is critical to a just society. When I came to work for New Leaders, I felt that passion that I've had throughout the last 17 years in education really align with these core beliefs. And I like the fact that it's not necessarily all something new. It's something that connects with basically all the prep work that I've done to become an educational leader. So, who are we at New Leaders? Since 2001, there have been over 3,900 school leaders trained, and that looks different depending on which part of the country or which program those principals were embedded in. For a while, it was just a residential program, and the principals would go for months at a time to Boston and do in-depth research, kind of like residence work in like you would if you were a doctor. And then it has transformed over time, over the last 19 years, to different programming throughout the United States. Washington is the Rural Alliance is the first partnership in Washington. So this expansion is kind of cutting edge, innovative, and what Kevin and Dick and the Rural Alliance Committee has been able to provide, especially to the small rural principals, is a really world-renowned, informative, innovative piece. So here are the schools that have been engaged over the last 2 years. You can see the elementary, middle and high, and then K-12 schools and their principals. Most are in Eastern and Central Washington, and I think we would love to be able to expand to some other areas as well. One of the key beliefs, leadership changes everything. I will lead. Some of the leadership programs that are offered, and you can also find a lot more information that I'll show you later or on our website. There's the Emerging Leaders Principal Program, Aspiring Principals, Principal Institute, Principal Supervisors, so for more of the superintendent piece. And then the Virtual Leadership Academy is a new offering for this virtual time through the pandemic that I'll explain more on in just a few minutes. I think something big to note, though, is that we developed great leaders at every level. So there's programs available for teacher leaders, to coaches, to superintendents, to assistant principals, principals. We've got a lot of offerings that we really tailor to either the partnership or the school district that we're working with. All right, this moves into an opportunity that you or your principal could, or any teacher leader could jump into today. It's the Virtual Leadership Academy. The fall session is beginning soon if the principals or teacher leaders want to do it synchronously, which means on Zoom, doing it like a classroom time. If they want to do it asynchronously, they can sign up today. They can watch the videos. They can get some of the work and ideas and learning and resources to use in their schools tomorrow. The Virtual Leadership Academy has been going throughout the summer since we had to make that shift and pivot quickly to distance learning or hybrid learning or some in-person learning, some at home learning. And I'll give you a chance to, I will pause and let you read what the participating leaders from across the country have been doing. And then in the chat, or if you want to come off mute and ask any questions or lift anything that looks interesting to you, please go ahead and do that. I'll give you about 1 minute to read that. Okay. Is there anything that, or any questions that anyone has? Okay. Move that real quick. All right, looking forward, there are some resources and tools that we like to share with anyone who is interested. For information on our programming or just to get to know a little bit more about us, you can look at www.newleaders.org. But then I also wanted to share with you today just a snapshot of some of the resources and tools that we have developed to focus on supporting leaders in their communities right now. So that Virtual Leadership Academy, which I mentioned before, there's the flyer for that. There's information. I would be happy to send this out to anyone who would like it, or you can find this also on our website. You can see you're back to school. Now what? There's free programming, there's flexible online learning, there's ready to use tools from experienced leaders. There's also the transformational leadership framework, which we dove into a little bit yesterday in the session. This is a framework that is not an evaluation framework like what we're used to in TPEP or using Marzano or Cell 5 or Danielson and Washington State. It is more a framework of growth with different categories and levers of what would be important in teaching and learning, what would be important in talent management, basically the everyday runnings throughout the school. And it is not opening for me. I'm hoping that's not my internet connection, but I would be happy to send that to you if you would like that. Just new the last couple of weeks is the New Leaders Virtual Look-Fors for remote learning. And our coaches right now are working closely with those in the cohorts to make sure that they're looking through these pieces. And it just talks about what the principals or coaches are looking for as they're observing either virtually or just observing in person in this new era of schooling. So talks about assignments, do they have the high quality text still? Do they have the problems and the tasks aligned with those skills that all students need to learn? And are they addressing that education gap that definitely happened last spring? They're talking about the clarity of instructions because we all know that in the Zoom space, you have to be crystal clear to make sure that there is understanding. And some of the kids that are learning at home have a lot of other distractions as well. There's teacher look-fors, and it just kind of goes through a quick checklist of what could be helpful for everyone in this virtual world. So if you'd like access to that, I'd be happy to share that with you as well. Just let me know. And then we also have a new virtual classroom toolkit. And in this toolkit, it talks through just different day-to-day issues and things that are happening in our classrooms. I wish we had time today to go through all of this, but as you can see, there's a lot of resources packaged pretty easily to read and understand that I would be happy to share with you if you are interested as well. Just send me an email. I'm going to plot my email into the chat box real quick so that you can do that. I will share that with you again later on at the end of our presentation. But my email is cstrozek@newleaders.org. Okay, so in the chat, I would like to invite you to engage. Do you think that engaging in the Virtual Leadership Academy could assist, could assist your work at this time? Sorry, my mouse. Okay. And then what are you currently looking or using for virtual look-fors and classroom observations? So do you think that could be helpful? And what are you currently using? All right, moving forward then, our second area to become involved is with our program in the Rural Alliance. And I've talked with Kevin, there's still space available to join. Cohort 1 is in their year 2 of the program. If we have new principals interested in joining, they would be part of Cohort 2. That cohort, like Kevin said, began in August. They have been through a 2-day launch process, a program orientation, and they're involved in community of practice sessions. Those community of practices are day-long events. There's some synchronous and asynchronous learning time embedded to really dive deep into foundations of instructional leadership. What should the principal be doing? What high leverage move can the principal do to help the teams within their system? Well, and even to develop a team in their system if they don't have that yet established, to then impact students at the highest level of learning possible. So this year there are 5 community of practice sessions. They are virtual at this point. We're hoping to be back on site in January or February, but that will be dependent on the pandemic. We have leadership walks, and those leadership walks are where groups of principals will work with their coach and go into virtual classrooms. They'll take some high inference notes. They'll develop what trends they're seeing and then learn how to use a process like that in their own school in order to have the highest leverage of either professional development or change management that they're going to need to move their school to the next level. One of the things that I found most beneficial when I was part of the program was the coaching sessions. That is one-on-one coaching. The coach would come out to the schools. Right now it's virtual, obviously, but being able to have those frank conversations, being a thought partner, being able to have someone to listen that was definitely not evaluative. I know working in the small schools, I had a great community of teachers and my superintendent, my principal, other principal were amazing, but there were often times that things that I didn't feel comfortable sharing with them because maybe I was feeling not quite proficient in that. And so being able to have someone that didn't even live in the state of Washington to bounce ideas off of, that was one of the most helpful things that I gained from the program. This year, the new cohort is doing reflective learning exercises, and that leads into a 4-part action planning. Basically, they're going in, they're diagnosing the state of their schools and their students at this point in time. So collecting data, analyzing to see if there is a learning gap from the pause of school the last few months, and then making a plan to close that gap and to make sure that students are getting what they need in this present time right now, and making sure that the learning is not forgotten, really keeping that a key piece. And with that 4-part action planning, it's basically the cycle of inquiry with help through coaching, leadership walks, and community of practice sessions in order to develop sustainability to help that principal leverage his teacher leaders or her teacher leaders, and making sure to bring that school to higher level of student learning. Any questions at this point in time? Okay, what you're seeing on the screen right now is just information from the cohort 1 that completed their first year last, I guess, May, and are now in year 2. Here are some things that they said about their partnership and what they gained with new leaders. I'd like to highlight the quote down below in the left-hand corner. During grade level team meetings, discussions have been around using data to drive student learning and using standards to drive instruction and fill gaps. Student learning has improved. That's a Rural Alliance participant. At the end of each session, and mid-year and end of year, we collect survey data, and 93% of those participants agreed that the program was increasing their ability to support improved academic outcomes for students. And being on the ground as a part of that professional development last year before coming to New Leaders, I can definitely tell you it completely flipped my mindset of what was important. I oftentimes would get stuck in the management of my building instead of the instructional leadership, and being able to learn how to delegate the things that others could control and then really internally work on the student learning piece was very, very helpful. You can see the participants last year, program components, and then the content strands that we really focused on: learning and teaching, school culture, personal leadership, talent management, and planning and operations. So principals are wearing big, big hats, and lots of them right now. So are superintendents, teacher leaders, assistant principals, and everyone involved in school buildings. The root of our work is based on the transformational leadership framework. We've identified those 5 categories that I just highlighted. And with that, there is a document that is fairly thick that gives kind of the look-fors and the how-tos, and it shows what principals should be doing in that, and then what they can develop their teachers into doing and their coaches. And I'll give you a minute to take a look at that slide. Something that I found really helpful is the idea with using the transformational leadership framework. It leads into that shared leadership, and especially in our rural schools, that's where oftentimes, you know, as a principal, you're driving the bus, you are serving the meals in the cafeteria, you are, you know, doing everything in that day to day, and this grounds into how to create that team to help as well. These are the levers of personal leadership that we focus on at New Leaders. We start with that belief-based and goal-driven instruction, belief that all students we believe that all students and children can achieve at high levels. We're equity-focused, create an inclusive culture that removes limitations. Adaptive to manage change, and goodness, that is such a huge, huge impact this year, especially. Interpersonal, building strong and trusting relationships, and then showing that resiliency, demonstrate resolve in the face of adversity and challenge. And I can 100% say the educators of Washington are probably the most resilient individuals that I've ever seen at this point in time. I have 2 children that are in a school, and they actually get to go to school for 4 hours a day, but the heavy lift that the educators are doing to make that possible is just amazing and appreciated. The program components, the way they're connected, the coaching and the leadership walks and the community of practice sessions all lean in to our scope and sequence for our program outcomes. Those are some actual pictures of the Rural Alliance getting a little silly with some of our community building last year. All right, so in the chat, what questions do you have about our work? What do you want to know more about? And this is a time that you can also come off mute and just ask. We're getting towards the end of our presentation, and I want to make sure to give us some time to go through anything that you might want to know more about. All right, for those of you who are watching this on recording, if you do have any questions, you can definitely email me. Again, that's cstrozek, CSTROZYK @newleaders.org, or you can give me a call and I'll show our contact information here. The Rural Alliance team, as you know, are Kevin and Kimberly Jacka. My name's Courtney Strozek, and I also work closely with our Senior Executive Director, who's not on the call today. And her name is Maria, and she works out of the Bronx in New York. Any questions? All right, thank you for your time today. I hope you have a great afternoon.